Hi, and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Game of Thrones Season 6, Episode 5, The Door. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Game of Thrones, so I'll have to give a spoiler warning for Game of Thrones up to Episode 5 of Season 6. If you haven't seen up to this point, you may not want to watch this video, otherwise some things may be spoiled for you. However, this video will not contain other kinds of spoilers such as from the novels or production leaks, so it will be free of those kinds of spoilers. So typically, for some reason, I tend to not like episode 5s of Game of Thrones. For the past 3 seasons, episode 5 has been my least favorite episode of the season, so I was wondering if this season would break that trend, and I would say it did. I thought this was a powerful episode with a lot of great revelations, especially for book readers. However, I had the sinking feeling all season that events tend to be happening a tad too quickly without the proper setup and character development that Game of Thrones is best at, and that feeling was kicked into overdrive for this episode. However, like last year's episode 5, it focused on fewer locations than what they normally do, and I really liked that and thought that's exactly what this season needed at this point, as all the previous episodes focused on too many storylines in a single episode, so it was good to get a breath of air in that regard and spend more time on each storyline. So we begin our episode in Castle Black, where Sansa gets a letter from Littlefinger, then goes to Molestown with Brienne to meet him. Littlefinger seems all like lovey-dovey and, "Oh, Sansa, how great to see you again," but Sansa's not having any of that, as she's still really pissed off about Littlefinger giving her to Ramsay. She outright says, "If you didn't know who he was, then you're an idiot, and if you did know, you're my enemy." Now, I've talked about this in other videos, but it's been confirmed by writer Brian Cogman and the actor who plays Littlefinger that he did not know the kind of man Ramsay was, and that he'll spend season 6 trying to make amends for that. So book readers might complain that's ruining Littlefinger's character to have him make such a huge mistake, but I think it's another case of where you have to keep what you know from the books separate from what you know of the show, as they are two separate entities, and this is the Littlefinger that they presented us with in the show, who doesn't know absolutely everything in the world and made a plan not fully knowing the character of one of the key players in that plan, and I'm perfectly fine with that. It is interesting to hear Sansa talk about the pain she endured by Ramsay and how she still holds that over Littlefinger. I think we see how strong her character has become, where she threatens Littlefinger and his life seems to hang in the balance, and she seems really comfortable with exerting that sort of power, and I expect to see more of that. So Littlefinger says he has an army of Vale soldiers in Moat Cailin ready to come to our aid, but Sansa refuses, saying that she wants no help from him, which is actually quite a big mistake, as we'll see in the coming scenes, that she desperately needs men, and to turn down such a powerful force is a huge mistake. However, she is smart not to trust Littlefinger. After all, trusting him is what got her father killed, and Littlefinger continues to be Littlefinger by trying to sow seeds of distrust between Sansa and Jon by specifying, "Oh, he's just her half-brother." I really hope she didn't fall for that. However, he does impart some important information to her before leaving, telling her about the Tullys and how her great-uncle Brynden the Blackfish has retaken River Run and commands an army, which is important information indeed. So later we see Sansa with Jon, Davos, Melisandre, Brienne, Ed, and Tormund Giantsbane strategizing over a map. Davos brings up again what was brought up in previous episodes, that the 3 most powerful houses in the north, other than the Starks or Boltons, are the Umbers, Karstarks, and Manderleys, but also adds that the Umbers and Karstarks have already declared for the Boltons. Sansa mentions that the Umbers gave Rickon to the Boltons so they can all hang for as much as she cares, but suggests that they might be able to gain the Karstarks' allegiance, but Davos suggests against that, as they will still hold resentment for the fact that Robb executed their lord. They argue about it for a bit, but Davos is Absolutely correct. The Karstarks are a lost cause because we've seen that the new Lord Karstark is acting as Ramsay's right-hand man. So if they were to try to approach them, that would be a huge mistake. Sansa tries to argue that Davos doesn't know the North, and he counters with that he knows that men don't want their wives and children to be skinned for a lost cause. Then Jon points out all the other houses in the north, like the Mormonts, Glovers, Kerwins, and more, and suggests that if they gain all of their support, they'll equal the major houses. And I'm a bit disappointed he didn't mention trying to gain the Manderley support, as Davos just mentioned that they're the only major house not declared for the Boltons yet, so it seems like gaining their support should be a priority, but I'm sure they'll get back to that soon. So Sansa then brings up the Tullys, which has everyone feeling a bit more upbeat, and Davos says it's starting to look like they have a fighting chance. However, Sansa lies about how she knows the Blackfish reformed the Tully army and said that she heard it from Ramsay before she escaped. She also failed to mention that there is a vast Vale army ready and willing to fight on their side, which I'm sure everyone would be pretty interested in knowing, but I'm sure she's just trying to completely keep Littlefinger out of it, as she doesn't trust him. Now, not trusting Littlefinger tends to seem like the smart thing to do. Even he said that himself to Ned, but I'm not so sure it's the smart thing to do here, but only time will tell. So next we see that Sansa ordered Brienne to go to Riverrun to ask for Tully's assistance. Brienne is very much against the idea of leaving Sansa's side, but Sansa orders her because she wants someone she trusts to go to them, as she doesn't trust the words to a raven. And Brienne states her distrust of Davos, Melisandre, and Tormund, but Sansa says that she trusts Jon and that he'll keep her safe. Now, I'm not so sure Sansa and the others are being that smart, thinking that they can rely on Tully's support, as they should be aware that they're still having their own shit to deal with in the Riverlands. The Riverlands is still in the hands of the Frey, so I'm not sure how realistic they're being, thinking the Tullys will go all the way up north to help them. And I suspect Brienne is going to get into some arguments when she tries to talk them into it. In fact, I think Jon and Davos are being really obtuse about this, and I actually see that as poor writing, but whatever. So then we see Sansa, Jon, Davos, Melisandre, and Tormund ready to depart to go on a tour of the north to gain support for their cause. And once again, Tormund is making eyes at Brienne, who's not having it. And Sansa has knitted herself a fancy wolf dress and even made a fancy Stark coat for Jon. So here we go, gearing up for war. And after they leave, we see someone go up to Ed and call him Lord Commander, and he starts to say, "I'm not Lord Commander," but then notices that there's not many people left at Castle Black, and they're all looking towards him. So he's like, fine, whatever, just shut the gate. So there we go. Ed's the new Lord Commander, and it makes sense since they need not bother with another stupid election, seeing how there's hardly any of them left. So I'm perfectly fine with that. So overall, I liked these scenes. I thought it was great, but in the end, it's mainly just setup, necessary setup that's got me excited, but setup nonetheless. So next we'll go to Braavos, where once again we see Arya fighting the waif with sticks, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of people complaining about how boring her storyline is on the net. And while I've been a great defender of the Arya storyline, I will agree it's starting to drag a bit. But I believe they're, setting up a conflict between Arya and the waif. So Jaqen comes in and seems to agree with the waif because they're prejudiced against Arya for being born to a proper house. And we get a bit of a history lesson from Jaqen about the origins of the Faceless Men. And it makes me wonder, if the Faceless Men are so strongly against slavery, why don't they join Daenerys' cause in Slaver's Bay? But somehow I doubt that they will. So Jaqen sends Arya on another mission, saying that she's getting a second chance, but she won't be given a third, which is pretty much the same thing that Prince Doran said to Ellaria Sand, and she ended up betraying and killing him. So does that mean something similar will happen between Arya and Jaqen? I guess we'll have to see. Anyway, Jaqen sends Arya to kill an actress and says one way or another a face will be added to the hall. I suppose, saying either the actress's or hers. So Arya goes to watch the play of the actress she's meant to kill, and the play is a twisted version of the events in King's Landing in season 1 and a bit beyond. And I love this scene as it was pretty much a big commentary on Shakespeare, how his plays were often propaganda for the ruling party at the time, and this play was obviously Lannister propaganda, and all the lines rhymed as would in Shakespeare. So King Robert was portrayed as a ruffian drunk, Ned Stark as a bumbling idiot, and Tyrion as a devious villain, and Joffrey and Cersei as the true, pure heroes that were kind and true. And there were other inaccuracies, such as Tyrion being involved in these events, as he wasn't even in King's Landing at the time, and they gave Littlefinger's part of betraying Ned to Tyrion, who wasn't even there. And the argument between Ned and Cersei was very interesting, where Cersei offers for Ned to be Joffrey's hand, but he says he demands the Iron Throne, and then they argue, Cersei saying the line of secession, and Ned keeps saying, what's that mean? Now, I find that scene in particular quite interesting, because that's pretty much the exact opposite of how it actually went down, as Cersei was the one who desired the throne, whereas Ned just wanted to follow the rightful law of secession, and Cersei was the one who didn't care about the line of secession. And then there was more glorifying Joffrey, where he promised to spare Ned Stark's life, but Tyrion paid guards to kill him anyway, and again, Tyrion wasn't even there. So yeah, I studied a little bit about Shakespeare and how inaccurate some of his plays were, in particular Richard III, and I'm sure it was meant to be a huge commentary on that, especially since the plays was taking place during the War of the Roses, in which Game of Thrones draws a lot of inspiration from. So I really enjoyed this, and I wonder if we'll see another part of this play later on where they showed Tyrion killing Joffrey and Tywin, and completely spin that as well. But of course, what was really interesting in terms of the current storyline is Arya's reaction while watching this play, as she was enjoying it at first when they were mocking King Robert, but as soon as they started mocking Ned and bringing in a false version of how he was killed, she noticeably got upset. And to me, this was very telling that Arya is still Arya. And then she goes backstage to gather more information, and then learns that her mark is the only one amongst the acting troupe who drinks rum, so if she just poisons the rum, she can kill her. So she reports this back to Jaqen, and he again, hints at Arya not being ready to be a faceless assassin, so we'll see how this goes off. I think it's possible she might actually do it this time. I was surprised that she wasn't more willing to kill off these actors after the way they were portraying her family, but I don't know. So next, let's go over to the Iron Islands, where we see the Kingsmoot in progress, where Yara claims to be the queen of the Iron Islands, but others argue that the Iron Islands has never had a queen, and then point out that Balon's son and heir is returned. So then Theon goes to speak, and I actually found this moment quite suspenseful, because I honestly didn't know if he was going to support Yara or try to claim the Salt Throne for himself, but he does indeed speak up for Yara, and says that she deserves to rule them all. And you can see how touched that she was by his words of devotion. Everyone there seemed to be convinced as well, as started chanting her name. That is until Euron shows up and he claims the Salt Throne for himself while berating Theon and Yara. Then Yara accuses him of killing Balon, but he doesn't even deny it. He outright admits and apologizes for not doing it sooner. He said no one loved him and no one wanted to follow him, but I'm still surprised everyone was so quick to forgive him for killing his own brother, so he could take the throne for himself. You think that kind of thing would be looked down upon, even by pirates, but apparently not. So Euron further wins people over by promising to make an alliance with the Dragon Queen, who commands a large army, and becoming her husband, as she has the power to conquer all of Westeros. So with her alliance, they could rule all of Westeros. So that wins them over, and they pronounce him king. But while they're going through a drowning ceremony to pronounce him king, Yara and Theon use that distraction to slip away with a large portion of the royal fleet. And when Euron discovers them missing, he pronounces that he will go and murder them. Again, everyone else is totally on board with kinslaying. But When he discovers that they slipped away, he doesn't care and proclaims to build a large fleet. So the question then becomes, where are Yara and Theon going? And I think they're going straight for Daenerys and are going to try to get to her before Euron does. At least that's just my guess, but we'll have to see. So this is another scene I felt happened way too fast. It kind of reminded me of Dorne. Now, I'm not saying that's anywhere near as bad as Dorne, but it had that mark of speeding through the storyline too fast while not introducing the characters properly. That being said, there aren't as many new characters in this storyline, so I buy it more. However, I thought they could have done a better job with Euron after this great introduction of him that we got in episode 2. But I don't think it's beyond repair. He could still end up being a great character, but we'll have to see. So let's head over to Daenerys now, where we get a scene that surprised me, where Daenerys is ready to take Jorah back into her service when he reveals that he has grayscale and urges her to send him away. This was quite a touching scene, as she's really devastated upon learning his fate, and he professes his love for her, then goes to leave, but she asserts her power again, saying that she did not give him permission to leave, and then commands that he go find the cure and return. And then we see Daenerys and Daario ride off with the Dothraki. I suppose we can assume they're returning to Meereen. So I guess Jorah is going off on a mission to find a cure for the grayscale, and we know that one exists because of Shireen. Last season, Stannis recounted that he called in healers from all over the world, and he wasn't sure which one of them actually cured her, so no one knows what the cure is, but it exists. So I honestly have no idea what Jorah will be up to, but I'm sure we won't get scenes with him alone, so either we'll see him in people's storylines, or just won't see him again until after he's cured. Maybe he'll show up at Old Town and meet up with Sam, because it seems like going to the Maesters would be the best place to go to look for a cure, but I don't know, we'll see. So next we go to Meereen, where Varys and Grey Worm seem to be celebrating that Tyrion's peace seems to be working, as there have been no more killings on either side, but Tyrion isn't really happy with it because he feels the people need to know that Daenerys is responsible for the peace, and that Meereen needs to be fully backing Daenerys even further, and I think he's being extremely smart here, as he understands this peace is a good first step, but not by any means the end game, and that they still need to win the hearts and minds of the people of Meereen. So to do so, he summons the High Red Priestess of the Lord of Light from Volantis, Kinvara, and tries to convince her to turn the people to Daenerys' cause. However, she starts by saying that she doesn't need any convincing because she already believes Daenerys is the one who was promised. So everything seems to be going good until Varys challenges her, because if you recall, Varys hates magic and those who practice it, and which is why he was so against Stannis. He even brings up Stannis to the point out how wrong Melisandre was for believing Stannis was the one who was promised, but Kinvara retorts by stating things about Varys' past and how he was mutilated by a sorcerer at a young age, and even asks if he wants to know what the voice that was responding to him was saying and who said it. This was a really great chilling scene where, in a very rare case, we see Varys actually surprised and bested, as she apparently hit all of his soft spots. Like when she said, knowledge has made you powerful, but there's still a lot you don't know. And that's truly how she bested him, by stating she knows more than he does, which is a true rarity indeed. So I wonder if this move of Tyrion, that seems wise on the surface, might come back to bite them on the ass, as the priestess seemed pretty powerful and creepy. But on a more grand scale, I like the contrast between the priestess believing Daenerys is the one who was promised, with Melisandre believing that Jon Snow is the prince who was promised, as these are the two fan favorites in the fan theorydom, to be the one to fulfill these prophecies and defeat the great others, or White Walkers. So this, I think, is another example of the show narrowing things down, getting things set up for the end, and it's getting me really excited. So finally, we come to Bran, and this is the storyline where we learn a lot of huge revelations that will come as a shock even to book readers. First and foremost is when Bran travels to the past when the children of the forest were at war with the First Men to discover that they were the ones who created the White Walkers as a weapon against the First Men. So if you weren't aware of the history that they're referencing here, let me clear it up a bit. So thousands of years ago, Westeros was populated mainly by the children of the forest, whom you see here, that were pretty much in current times everyone believes has long since been extinct. They used to be the main inhabitants of Westeros that lived with nature and worships the weirwood trees and used to populate all of Westeros until somewhere between 12,000 and 8,000 years ago a race of humans from Essos traveled to Westeros to settle there who are known as the First Men. This race of humans farmed and cultivated the land and thus would cut down the weirwood trees which were sacred to the children, so the children attacked them, and then a war that lasted hundreds of years in which the children were being wiped out ensued. So this flashback takes place during that war, and it's a huge revelation. I would even call it a major spoiler for the books, unless the books go in a different route, but I kind of doubt that they will, that the White Walkers were created by the children as a weapon against the First Men. Eventually the First Men and the children of the forest make peace, and eventually sometime between 6,000 and 8,000 years ago, the children of the forest teamed up with the First Men to defeat the White Walker who invaded Westeros. And the children helped build the wall to keep out the White Walkers, and that's when the Night's Watch was formed to protect against the White Walkers. And eventually, when the Andals settled Westeros, the children of the forest were all but wiped out and believed to be extinct. So, if we plug in this new information, we learned that the children created the White Walkers as a weapon against the First Men, but millennia later fought a war with the First Men against the White Walkers. It makes the White Walkers sort of out to be a weapon of mass destruction that got out of control. The analogy I would make is to compare it to the Star Trek original series episode Doomsday Machine, where there was a vast alien device going around destroying worlds. It was a weapon of mass destruction that likely destroyed its creators and was still wandering around aimlessly, killing countless other planets. Although there might be more to the White Walkers than that, for example, we still don't know why they have finally awoken after 6,000 years of being dormant, so I reckon we still have more to learn about them, but it seems clear to me that what their goal is, and that is to destroy humanity, as that's what their original creation was all about, a weapon against humanity. I'm sure the revelation will come into play later on in the series. So later, we see Bran messing around with the Blood Raven is asleep, and he checks and make sure he's asleep, and then he goes off on his own little Greenside adventure. He goes to what I assume is the same tree he saw before, but in present times when it's completely covered in snow, and there he sees the army of the dead that don't notice him at all. So he walks through them until coming to the 4 White Walkers on their horses. They notice him right away, and as soon as they notice him, all of the whites notice him as well. And Bran is all freaking out looking at the whites, not noticing that the Night's King walks up right behind him and grabs his arm. And when he walks up to the Blood Raven and tells him that the White Walkers are going to be coming for him now, and because that he touched Bran, they'll be able to get through. So the Blood Raven says they all need to leave. It's time for Bran to become the new Blood Raven, and when Bran asks if he's ready, he just flat out says no. So I still don't know what being the Blood Raven means. I mean, what does it mean to become the new him? Or what is their big plan to defeat the White Walkers? And why are they just hanging out in the cave visiting the past? What does this have to do with beating the White Walkers? So I'm still unclear on all of this. So then we see Bran and the others preparing to leave. Mira really is excited about leaving, about finally being able to get out of that stupid cave, while Bran and the Blood Raven are busy doing their green sight thing. Then Mira runs out and notices a huge White Walker army right at their doorstep, and thus a huge battle ensues. The Children of the Forest try to starve off the White Walker attack, while Mira goes to get Bran, but can't break him from his trance. And we see Bran and the Blood Raven are visiting Winterfell when Ned was a kid. This when the time when he was preparing to leave for the Eyrie. Now I'm not sure why they're there or why they stay there and won't wake up. I don't know. But so the Children of the Forest build a wall of fire around the entrance, but the White Walkers just walk right through it. However, it does prevent the Whites from coming through. So they run around to try to find other ways to get in. So I was wondering if they would leave, if they would still have the Children of the Forest being able to throw fireballs again, because I know a lot of people complained about this last time, and apparently they changed the whole appearance of the Children of the Forest because people complained. But me personally, I never had a problem with this fireball throwing, and I disagree wholeheartedly with all this petty whining about it. So I was really hoping that they'd keep it, and they did. But they specified that it wasn't, that they could shoot fireballs from their hands. It's that they would pick up objects like acorns and they could set them ablaze and throw them, which those familiar with fantasy role-playing games will know all about this magical trait. And to me, this just justifies their ability even more. So I'll try not to go off on another rant about how ridiculous it is to complain about fireball throwing in the show, where there are 3 huge dragons, giants, people coming back to life, and an army of fucking ice zombies, and fireball throwings is the one thing you have the problem with? Oh, come on! Anyway, moving past that. The White Walkers and Whites invade, but still, Blood Raven and Bran won't stop their green sight adventure and come back, and the children begin to lose to the invading force, and we see Mira kill a White Walker by throwing a spear at him. No doubt the spear had a piece of dragon glass on it that Sam had given her in season 3. But then the show does something that really, really pisses me off. We see Summers, Bran's direwolf, growl and attack the Whites, but then we see Summer get killed as he howls in pain. I mean, seriously, this is some grade A bullshit right here. This pisses me off so much. I don't know why the fuck the showrunners feel it's so necessary to kill off all of the direwolves. I mean, we haven't even seen Summer all season, and they just show up right at the last second just to get killed right away. This is pure nonsense. So now the only direwolves left are Jon's ghost and Arya's wolf Nymeria, who is off wandering around the Riverland somewhere, but no doubt those wolves are probably going to die this season as well. I think I would have to say that this is the worst death that this show has ever done. It was so pointless, it was unnecessary, and it just pisses me off. However, the episode is not done giving me deaths that upset me, as we see Mira screaming at Bran to wake up, and he doesn't, but he can hear her while he's in Winterfell's Pass. Then we see the White Walkers approach the Blood Raven while he's warging, and he says his goodbyes to Bran as he knows he's about to die, and then he disappears in a puff of smoke. So then Mira runs with Bran for the exit, but it doesn't look like they're going to make it. So then Leaf, who appears to be the last child of the forest alive, blows herself up to take out a bunch of Whites. So the Blood Raven and the Children of the Forest are dead after only appearing in like 2 or 3 episodes. I'm sorry, but that's more bullshit. We barely got to know them or learn anything about them. They just killed them off. It didn't upset me as much as Summer's death, but it still upset me. So then we get the big reveal when Bran wargs into Hodor, but he's still in the past. So apparently, why he's doing, while he's doing the warging into Hodor the present, he wargs into him of the past as well. And so they manage to make it out of the cave through a door, which they close behind them, but Mira is screaming at Hodor to hold the door so she can get away with Bran. So she's screaming, hold the door, and that somehow translates to Hodor of the past, who is also screaming, hold the door, until that gets shortened and smushed into Hodor. So apparently this is where Hodor became the only thing that he could say because Bran's warging and interference, and in the moment Hodor as a kid was connected to his future self at the moment of his death, when the only important thing for him to do was hold the door. Now this scene was quite touching and tragic. It reminded me a lot of the ending of 12 Monkeys. Spoiler for that movie if you haven't seen it, but it's like 20 years old now, so come on. But that's when a man time travels back to the past and he's killed, and his 6-year-old self witnesses the death of his future self, and his whole life he's been haunted by the dreams of seeing his future self get killed, which is basically the deal with Hodor, as Hodor became the only thing that he could say because it's apparently from the moment of his death. So this scene has other significance because it shows how Bran can affect the past. Mind you, I said affect, not change, because Bran can't change the past, but some things that happened might have always had happened because of something Bran did. Because Hodor became a simpleton, it's what led him to joining the Avengers that he was on with Bran in the first place, so he could be there to save Bran's life. So it was all a cycle, a sort of circle that is always meant to happen, where Hodor was always meant to become a simpleton so he could be there to hold the door and save Bran's life. I quite like these time travel devices like this, and thought that this one was pulled off really well. So I have to give some credit to Pterodex, who commented on my review for episode 2, saying that the word Hodor came from a trauma he underwent where the true meaning is hold door. Although Pterodex got the context wrong because stated that it had to do with not being able to save Lyanna, and many others predicted Hodor got changed that way because of something Bran did with his warging. It was interesting though that somebody connected Hodor that meant hold the door, and to be honest, when I first saw the comment I thought it was funny. I didn't suspect that it would actually be the case, but apparently it is, so kudos to you for getting that right. As the first thing I thought of when I watched that scene was, holy shit, that commenter was right. So overall, I had mixed feelings about this scene. There were parts of it I liked, like the Hodor reveal, and parts of it I didn't like Summer's death, but overall I feel similarly about this as I do about the King's Moot, in that it felt rushed, and that this scene came too soon. We didn't get enough time with the Blood Raven and the Children of the Forest before killing them all. So yeah, that's kind of where I stand. So my rating for The Door out of 10 is an 8. Extremely good. We had some major revelations to Bran and his storyline that were great, and it was intense storytelling, and overall it was pretty satisfying and engaging episode where at no point did I feel bored or wish that they would just move on. But the issue I had with this episode wasn't that it was too slow, it was that it was too fast. One of the hallmarks of Game of Thrones that makes me love this show so much is the character development and dialogue and interaction. And there's there's too many characters killed off in this episode before we get to know them very well, or before their stories moved along enough. So there were aspects to Bran's storyline that was great, including all the revelations and the tense battle sequences at the end. Most of the other storylines, while still being really interesting, were mostly just set up. So that's it for my review of The Door. Be sure to check back here tomorrow at 7 p.m. Pacific time in the US on Monday night, which will be 2 p.m. on Tuesday afternoon for me here in New Zealand, as I do my weekly live discussion with my brother Apkin Tomko. So join us as we dissect this episode even further. I will also be doing my mid-season predictions video later this week, where now that we're halfway through the season, I'm going to try to update my predictions to try to predict what will happen in the remainder of the season. So be sure to check that out. Also check out many other videos I do on shows like Star Trek, Fear the Walking Dead, Orphan Black, and more. And be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. Thanks a lot for watching.